Welcome everyone who has joined us. You can see in the chat, I opened up the chat for some questions. If you want to participate while Lisa speaks, and I'll save the questions for the end. And maybe there's some common questions as well. So I know the screen says I'm Nuno. I am not Nuno. Great. I'm not Nuno. I'm Grace. Just need to change the title on the Skype. And yeah, so I'll have Lisa do an introduction for herself. I'm going to be managing the slides. So if you hear Lisa say next slide and so on, don't worry about that. That's just me. And yeah, thank you all so much for joining. I'm sure some more people are going to be joining as well throughout. So just feel free to ask questions. And then at the end, when Lisa is done presenting, we're going to have a little Q&A and see what we can help with. And if there's any questions that we need to follow up with you after, then of course we will do that as well. So thank you so much, Lisa, for being here. And I'll let you take over.
Thanks, Grace. So my name's Lisa Hodge, and I am dyslexic. So I am going to talk you through the little presentation I've got today. It's more of a handrail for me to point me to kind of what to talk about. So there's not a lot of information on the slides, so don't worry, there's not going to be loads of reading as we go through it. Can I have the next slide, please, Grace?
Yep.
So this is just the agenda. So it just gives you a bit of a flavour for what I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to do a little bit about me, education, my assessment and diagnosis, the sort of emotional stages of that, and then the challenges and strengths, as well as the Defence Dyslexia Network that I currently am engaged with. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit about me. So I was diagnosed only a few years ago, actually. So I think I've probably always known that I'm dyslexic, but didn't have the diagnosis or didn't have anybody stand up and go, "Oh, do you think it's dyslexic?" So that's kind of why I'm so delayed in getting my diagnosis. So I'm a mum of two children. My son has got dyslexia as well as other comorbid neurodiversities. And I have a daughter. I'm going to say at the moment, she's currently neurotypical, but I don't think she is neurotypical. And my husband is also dyslexic. So we've got a house full of dyslexics, which is great because we've all got different skill sets. My day job is actually a contract manager, which is quite intensive and involves loads and loads of written work and reading and processing information and all that kind of stuff that we kind of struggle with. So it is a bit of a weird profession to maybe go into. I actually co-founded and I co-chair the Defence Dyslexia Network. So I work for the MOD, the Ministry of Defence. And within there, we have so many people who are dyslexic. So this network aims to support everybody. And then last year, I won the Inspirational Award in the Women in Defence Awards. So that was quite a proud moment for me. I think we could probably skip on to that one. Next one again. So education. We're going to go through a little bit of a kind of stint of my education, and just to pre-warn you, it could be sort of triggers for some people within this slide, but this is kind of my personal experience of what I've been through, and probably kind of helped build me to who I am today. So in school, I can remember teachers telling me that I wasn't very good at stuff, that I made careless mistakes constantly. And I felt like I was working really hard all the time to just get by. And I can't even say to succeed or to reach the kind of pinnacle of feeling like you're doing something really well, because that never happened for me. So when I did my SATs, which are the exams you do at the end of junior school, I did better than my teachers me to do. And that was a surprise to them because they'd sort of written me off as not going to do well. So we're not really going to bother helping you with much because what's the point? You're not going to be one of the high achievers. So it's been a bit of a kind of missed opportunity at different points of my education where teachers have, written me off and said, I can't do this and you can't do that. And you're going to end up doing not a lot with your life. And then in high school, I did some work for my GCSEs and I handed it in. And my teacher just absolutely slated this piece of work. It was just the most awful experience because I can remember standing in front of the class while she basically ripped the work to shreds. And the trauma of that is probably still with me to this day. So I went home that day and I kind of melted down, I think, is probably true to life. And it was only then that my dad sort of said, well, come on, then let's have a look. So he and my big brother both really supported me. They proofread everything and they helped me kind of improve things because before that, it was just not good. I can't do I'm not a wordsmith and I'm not great with punctuation and grammar. So it's not, I'm not built for that. But it was then when I handed in that reworked piece of work, my teacher then said that I'd plagiarized the piece of work because it couldn't have possibly been my own work. So, it's not all roses, I don't think, this one. So I think being able to go through education and not be able to read until the age of 10 was a massive struggle when you kind of get pointed out in the class and it's your turn to read the next paragraph in the book and you're sat there going, I can't do this. And you kind of have to look at this paragraph that you're going to be expected to read. So I would miss everybody else in the class reading their bits and I would come to my turn and I would have kind of been so nervous to just even speak the words. And I can remember so many times where it's not gone well and people have laughed at me and people have kind of gone, oh my God, she's so stupid, or that kind of stuff. It's kind of, yeah, it's one of the things that I think really does stick with you, the childhood trauma of what you've been through. So yeah, we'll move on now to assessment and diagnosis. So yeah, thank you, Chris. So I got to the grand age of 31 and I discovered that my employer would pay for me to have a dyslexia assessment, which was the absolute best thing that I found out ever, I think, to that point. But it did make me feel scared. I was a bit scared that, what if I go for this assessment and they say, actually, you're not dyslexic? Does that just make me just incapable? What does that actually mean? So all those kind of anxious feelings around that and kind of feeling like, oh, if I'm not dyslexic, then maybe I am just stupid. I don't know. So all the negative connotations that you've ever had thrown at you throughout your life very much came and hit me. So the impact, the assessment was so intensive, and it obviously focuses on the things that you find difficult because that's the point of the assessment, to find out, if these things do impact you. And I found it so exhausting because the mental effort to put into this assessment was so draining on me. But I was so relieved when it was over because honestly, it felt like a relief just doing that with somebody, even though it was quite difficult and it was quite eye opening. So to break the stigma, I was hoping I wasn't just stupid. And that moment when the assessor said to me, you are dyslexic, oh my God, I just felt like everything kind of made a bit more sense. So it felt like actually there was a reason why my brain's like it is. But also the trauma aspect comes back to play. So, how do I actually accept this diagnosis? How do I move forward with this diagnosis and what does it actually mean to me now for the rest of my life. With my self-esteem being rock bottom at this point, it kind of felt like an insurmountable challenge. But I then sort of had to then wait then for my diagnosis to come through properly. So next slide, please, Grace. So I've done some sort of slide for this one. So kind of the feeling of elation when you finally get that diagnosis on paper and you can get to see kind of what your challenges are and what your strengths are, and kind of understanding why your brain is the way it is, because that really was just the light bulb moment for me. The weight of the world had been lifted because, there was a reason. I had a reason why, but it also brought a lot of kind of anger, I suppose, because of all the times when in my life it could have been noticed, it could have been picked up, but it never was. I was just written off and told that you're not going to do well in life, so not going to bother. So it kind of, yeah, I'll go through this one, that's fine. So the emotional stages part, actually, this is something I developed in the Defence Dyslexia Network. So you go through these stages of confusion before your diagnosis. Like, why does my brain work like this? Why can't I understand things like everyone else does? And then you move to that acceptance part where you can go, right, okay, I've got dyslexia, so okay, what am I going to do next? And that's when your adjustments come in. So who can support you and how can they support you? What is out there that you can kind of draw from to really kind of understand what this means for you? And it's only when you've gone down that rabbit hole of research and finding other people who are like you that you then find your feet, because you've got an idea of what your dyslexia means for you and how you can maybe cope with all the challenges it brings, as well as celebrating those successes, because we always focus on the challenges, but actually the skills that we get is also a massive part to celebrate. And then you move to the winning part because you feel like you're supported and you're succeeding in whatever you are doing. I think this is very linear, and I think it probably should be more circular, because there are days when I say to a lot of people, oh, I'm having a dyslexic day today. And that just means that my brain is just kind of not working to its full potential. I might just have a bit of a foggy day where things just seem a lot more difficult than normal. So I'll probably go straight back from winning down to the confusion space. But yeah, next slide, please. So this slide is about challenges. So I think as dyslexics, we have a lot of stereotypes thrown at us where people assume they think that dyslexia is just about not being able to read, or you can't write, and that's it. Whereas actually there are a lot more challenges to dyslexia than just those things. So I've highlighted the pink ones as what my challenges are. So my spelling is awful, and I'm really glad we've got spell check, because I have no idea how my work would look if I did not have that. The ability to read and process that information is really difficult for me. I usually have to read things over and over and over again, but that's okay because I know that, and so do the people around me, so they can accommodate for the fact that I will need that extra time to read through stuff before I can kind of either regurgitate the information or give people an answer based off that information. I don't know my lefts and rights, so I'm constantly going like this, which is a bit strange. But my 9-year-old daughter, she is brilliant with her lefts and rights. So she'll often say, Mummy, it's this way. And I'm like, good, that's great. So confusion when I get several instructions at once. So this is to do with your working memory. My working memory is rubbish. I will be completely honest. It's not good. So people could fire X, Y, and Z instructions at me, and I might get X, maybe the first couple of words of Y, the Z is just not happening. So, usually I say to people, if you want something to it, send me an email with bullet points, because otherwise it's probably not going to happen. But obviously, there are then other challenges on that page that lots of other people have as well. Next slide, please. So the strengths. So I think this slide is so important to recognize. We do spend a lot of time beating ourselves up and kind of staying in the same spot of why can't I do things? So relating to your challenges, that's why you struggle with those things. But once you're supported and you have people to support you around you, you can really, really focus on what your strengths are. So for me, like I'm quite a creative person, got massive imagination. So usually I say to people, if you need an Easter bonnet making, then I can absolutely smash that out of the park for you because I can do that. But if you ask me to write an essay of 4,000 words, then I'm going to look at you and go, probably not, no. My ability to empathize with people is ginormous, I think. I think the emotional intelligence side of dyslexia is definitely something that I have got in spades because usually I can walk into a room and I can either be like, oh, what's happened in here? Or like pick up on how people are feeling by just subtle little things that, most people wouldn't even notice. And then the sort of ability to visualize solution and just think about how the end goal might look. And I can kind of picture what those end goals look like in my head. And sometimes it's then very difficult to explain to other people around me what am I saying? And my drawing skills are not always amazing, so sometimes it doesn't make sense. But it's frustrating when you know what the answer is before everyone else in the room does. Yeah, next slide, please. So this is about the Defence Dyslexia Network. So this is a network that I co-founded and I co-chair. So I am the civilian lead for this network. I have a co-chair who is the military lead and he's in the army. So I honestly could not tell you how proud I am of this network. We started off with a group of 5 of us just talking about how things should change for people with dyslexia. And we are now 2 and a bit years down the line, and we've got over 1,600 members. So having that kind of that overwhelming amount of people joining up in such a short period of time has really kind of given us the foundations of moving forward and actually making a change across the organization, which is so important because it feels like they throw the statistic of 1 in 10 or 1 in 5 people are dyslexic, but actually I think that's probably a lot higher. We just don't have the data to kind of back that up. But given the fact that we already have that many people, it sort of suggests that actually, lots of people need that support. And that's exactly what this network's doing. We are providing that support. We're helping people through diagnosis, we're helping people through different parts of getting support. And we have people come to us all the time and they'll be like, oh, I'm 60 years old or I'm 50 years old. Is there any point in me getting a diagnosis? And actually, I say to a lot of these people, yes, there is a point because you will kind of get those answers for why everything in your life to this point has been such a struggle. It will kind of give you that just knowledge to just excel with, which I think for me, that was kind of my moment in time where I went, oh, I can do so much now. I don't know why it was such a barrier, but it was. But so the sort of motto with this network is be the network. So we encourage all members to embody the network and just kind of spread it further and wider, which I think lots of people do, which is great. Next slide, please. And then just some final thoughts. And I appreciate this slide looks terrible, but thinking about it, I should have changed the text color. So sorry about that. So find your light bulb moment is my first advice because it is there. It will happen. It might not happen for a couple of years, but by one person telling their story and sharing their lived experience like I'm doing now can be someone's life raft in a few years' time to show them that actually that light is there at the end of that tunnel. Things will improve. Finding support, that I can't tell you how important that is because so many people struggle on their own and they don't realize that there's loads of people out there willing to help you. There are so many people out there who are like me, probably over the top passionate about helping people with dyslexia. And I will never apologize for being that way. But there are so many other people just like me who are out there just willing to help you. So be part of the drive towards people understanding their dyslexia. I think the more we talk about it, the more we bring it out in normal conversations, and the more we just kind of normalize it, will actually eventually lead to us just having to kind of have the freedom to feel like we can be dyslexic and not apologize for it. And then the final takeaway is be the network. So obviously you're part of the London Dyslexia Network. So be part of it, spread the message and get loads of other people to join. That is so important. So like-minded people can come together and just make a difference. And that is that.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for sharing all about what you do at work and what you have done at work and the community you have created. I have some questions for you from our attendees, and if anyone wants to add to the list of questions, feel free to do that now. And I also jotted down some questions as well that I took that might be helpful for other people listening. So one question is, we might have to follow up with this one after a bit as well, but I'm a software developer who is dyslexic. My line manager measures my performance by speed of how I deliver my stories. And as you know, with dyslexia, we tend to have differ in terms of speed. How shall I go about convincing my line management that I should be measured differently?
So I think this, you are definitely covered by the Disability Equality Act. So under that, your employer should be providing you with reasonable adjustments, and having a bit more time or being measured differently very much sounds like it fits into the reasonable adjustments category. I mean, obviously, if you're doing a job that, is time sensitive, then that might be a bit more difficult. But it kind of seems very unfair that you would be hit with that when actually they should be kind of abiding by that Equality Act.
Great. Another question is, how did you overcome all the trauma from childhood and young adult education settings? How did you not let those negative thoughts impact you now?
Oh, that's such a good question. Oh, I'll be honest, I probably haven't overcome all of it. But what I do now for the work I do, so I don't just do the Defence Dyslexia Network, I do things with my local health board to improve pathways for children who are neurodiverse. And I work with my local primary school to kind of educate them more on what dyslexia is. So I find just by doing these things to just make a difference now helps me to overcome that, because what I don't want is more people going through the same trauma. Like my son, for instance, he was diagnosed with dyslexia when he was 8, and it took a lot of fighting and a lot of kind of tears to get him what he needed. And it just proved to me that actually education hasn't changed one bit since I was there. So that was really the drive for me to kind of go, right, we need to make a change. Things need to be different. So that's kind of why I do things I do today. I do suffer with mental health issues, and some days are worse than others. But I have found that light bulb moment, and that's kind of why I think it's really important to have. So kind of write down the good things that happen to you. Think about what those good things are and how they've kind of impacted you going forward, because that's kind of the only way I've pulled myself out of this, is just thinking about the positives now, in the here and now.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thanks for that answer. Another question has come in. I've never told my employees about my employers about my dyslexia and always tried to manage without it. I'm starting a new job soon, and this time I want to own my dyslexia. and tell people so I can have support / be myself. How can I do this in a positive way? I'm always worried about what people's reactions to my dyslexia.
Yeah. So when I meet people for the first time, I will be like, "Hi, I'm Lisa and I'm dyslexic, and this means for me, blah, blah, blah." And I find that usually it opens up the conversation and it gives the kind of starting blocks for people to understand. So if you can kind of understand what support you might need, it's also a great conversation to have then with people around you.
Yeah, great. Another question that has come in is, how did you approach your workplace to get an adult dyslexia assessment? And do you remember where you had your assessment, or is there a place you recommend?
So I went through the British Dyslexia Association to find somebody who's local in my area. So they've got a list of practitioners who can do that assessment for you. In terms of approaching my workplace, I was just searching on the internet one day for dyslexia, just kind of randomly, and happened to stumble across a bit of policy that said that they will pay for my assessment. So I just took it forward from there. And I think I'm quite lucky, really, that my employer did do that. But for anybody else, there is like the access to work support from the CWP that you might be able to access and get that assessment through that process.
Yeah, great. And one of the questions just I had off of this, Barbara, I see you have your hand raised, so I will unmute you in a second. Just one of the questions I had going off of this is, how did you know that your employer offered this?
Just by finding the policy. Like,
Okay,
I don't think it was clear until that point. And then all of a
yeah,
sudden it was like, oh, wow, okay, there's policy here that says I can do this. So I just spoke to
yeah,
my line manager and off I went.
yeah. And do you feel like with your network that you're able to vocalize more to others that this is part of the policy? Like, do you feel like a lot of people also before that didn't really know that that was part of the policy?
Oh, so many people don't realize it's part of the policy. So one of the first things we did was we just did the process map of how people can go about this support. And we have that now really kind of obvious on our SharePoint pages to show people exactly how to go about that as well. So it's kind of opened up that and found a much better kind of way forward for people to go and get that support without having to sort of figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, no worries. I'm just, Barbara, I see it's a mistake, so no worries. Um, okay. And one of the other questions I had for you is, out of the 1,600 people in the network, do you know about how many are officially diagnosed, or like if any like that come, like what is the percentage of people that come that are already diagnosed, or is most of it people that haven't been diagnosed yet as adults?
So we haven't got exact data on that, but we do know it's a general mixture of people who haven't got diagnosis, who have got diagnosis, have children who are dyslexic, or line managers who are just looking to find support on how to support their dyslexic colleagues. So proper mixed bag of everybody, but actually it's great to have that kind of interaction with people because people are interested and they want to know what's going on.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. Do we have any more questions from anyone else about Lisa's experience or um, the Dyslexia Defense Network? I think we're good. Well, if we're all good with that, then I will wrap up this webinar. And yeah, we have it recorded, so we'll have it available on demand. And thank you again, Lisa, so much for your time and for chatting with us.
No problem. Thank you.
Oh, whoops, sorry, one second. I missed a question. Are there any tools that help you with your dyslexia?
OneNote. I can't tell you how much one note has changed my life because it just really helps me to organize everything in one place. And I don't have to have a million notepads everywhere with really random squiggles in that I'm like, well, what was I on about there? So one note.
OneNote, amazing. We'll recommend in the future. All right, great. Well, thank you so much again, Lisa. Thank you
No
everyone for
problem.
attending and your questions. And of course, if you have any follow-up questions or anything else that I can help with, you can email me. I sent an email to everyone who attended before. Um, there's also a free tool, my study bar. Uh, Clara Reed helped me. Okay, great. We got some great feedback there as well in the comments. All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for your time. And yes, I will make sure to follow up with everyone after when we have the recording. And of course, yeah, if there's any follow-up questions, you all should have gotten my email before this webinar and you can reach out to me directly. Thank you, Lisa, so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.